Some breaking news coming into us now. Tariff fallout, if you will, with FedEx now suing the Trump administration. They basically want a refund after the Supreme Court's tariff ruling. There's some legalese we'll show you here. Basically, FedEx says that since the justices decided those so-called reciprocal tariffs on pretty much any country are illegal, the administration owes them money. Gabe Gutierrez is joining us now. Presumably big bucks, Gabe. What do we know? I know this is just coming into us, and we're kind of just getting a chance to sift through this here, but it's interesting.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. Look, FedEx had recently said in an earnings call that these tariffs would cost the company basically $1 billion in 2026.
So there's some pretty big news happening right now. FedEx has just decided to take legal action against the Trump administration because they're looking for a refund after the Supreme Court ruled certain tariffs illegal. The gist of it is that FedEx argues that since those so-called reciprocal tariffs on a ton of countries aren't allowed anymore, the administration owes them money. They had mentioned in a recent earnings call that these tariffs could cost them around $1 billion by the year 2026. That's a significant amount, and it feels like we're only beginning to unravel this situation.
A big win for FedEx customers tonight. The company says it will return any tariff refunds to the customers who paid them after a Supreme Court ruling declared a set of tariffs illegal. FedEx says if it receives refunds, it will pass that money back to shippers and consumers who originally bore the charges, though more than 1,000 companies are pursuing similar claims in trade court as the battle over billions in tariff costs continues.
Now, shifting gears, this is quite the moment. We're witnessing an unprecedented scenario in U.S. history. A federal judge has authorized a possible arrest, and U.S. Marshals are apparently getting ready at Mar-a-Lago for this historic occasion. I mean, we're looking at the Attorney General who might have to instruct Secret Service agents to turn over the president to federal law enforcement. Imagine that. Just picture a sitting president potentially being handcuffed and taken into custody for felony obstruction of justice. It's really something. The thought of a sitting president facing arrest and the very real possibility of being removed from office.
Today, we urge you, in the face of overwhelming evidence of the president's guilt, and knowing that if left in office, he will continue to seek foreign interference in the next election, to vote to convict on both articles of impeachment and to remove from office Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States.
It's pretty interesting to see this whole situation unfold. Just before all the chaos, Trump made another post where he specifically targeted Republicans, calling them weak and soft. He seems frustrated, claiming they've fallen into the hands of Democrats, which has garnered a lot of attention. It's pretty clear he's reacting to the rising number of Republicans expected to support that upcoming vote, making things quite complicated.
Trump said on Truth Social this morning, "This is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors. Lock them up." And then, a short time later, the president finished with this thought: seditious behavior, punishable by death.
Now, something to keep in mind is that we're not going to see Trump today because he's traveling to Mar-a-Lago. It'll be interesting to see if he decides to chat with reporters on the plane, since he doesn't have any public appearances lined up. Since these emails reignited interest in the Epstein situation, he's been pretty quiet, making an unusual choice to dodge questions the last 2 times he was out in public. On another note, there's Judge Aileen Cannon, who Trump appointed herself, and she's now making some serious moves. On February 25th, 2026, Judge Cannon took things up a notch by issuing what's known as an imminent arrest authorization. Instead of just sending her impeachment referral to Congress, she made it clear that if Trump continues to defy her subpoena and obstruct justice, she will take the step to authorize his arrest. That means the U.S. Marshals could come to Mar-a-Lago and take him into custody. All this started because Judge Cannon sent Trump a subpoena for the White House server logs that would show if he directed the Department of Justice to erase Epstein files. She had specific demands with a clear deadline, expecting Trump to hand over the logs that demonstrated people in the White House accessed the DOJ database and deleted those files. Instead of complying, Trump completely ignored the subpoena for 72 hours, which is just unbelievable. He didn't even attempt to negotiate or claim executive privilege. He simply chose to disregard a federal judge's order.
A highly political judge, a totally conflicted judge, who just did something that nobody's ever seen. And the press is not happy. I don't imagine. They just got thrown out of a courthouse. Nobody's ever seen anything quite like it.
So here's the deal. Judge Cannon has made it clear that if Trump keeps ignoring her orders, she'll go ahead and authorize his arrest. The evidence against him is pretty serious. There are these server logs showing that someone accessed the Department of Justice database from an IP address linked to his home at Mar-a-Lago, right when files were being deleted. And those weren't just any files. They were related to Trump himself, including some that mentioned him by name in connection with Jeffrey Epstein. The fact is, someone at Trump's place, likely under his direction, got into the DOJ system and wiped out files to obstruct justice. Trump knows all of this. He knows the logs are going to show he ordered it. That's why he's ignoring the subpoena and staying quiet instead of complying. Judge Cannon even laid it out plainly. Presidential immunity doesn't hold up against overwhelming evidence in a felony case. If a president commits a crime and the evidence is irrefutable, the usual protections don't apply. This means the president can be arrested, prosecuted, and imprisoned just like anyone else. She set a deadline for compliance. It's tomorrow, February 28th. If he doesn't comply by then, an arrest warrant will be issued. What's more, this is all happening right as the House is gearing up to vote on impeachment, which is scheduled for February 27th, just 2 days after Judge Cannon's order. So on February 27th, the House will likely vote to impeach Trump. And then by February 28th, if he hasn't followed the subpoena, there could be federal marshals coming for him. That's the timeline we're looking at. Trump is facing serious consequences here. Interestingly, his social media presence has gone quiet. There are no more posts, no attacks on judges, no self-defense. He's completely silent, which really says a lot about how serious he knows the situation is. Trump knows he's in deep trouble. Arrest is looming, and he's facing the prospect of being the first sitting president in American history to be arrested. It's like his entire world is crumbling right before our eyes. The House is all set to impeach him with 225 co-sponsors already on board. The procedural vote has passed, and impeachment is practically guaranteed to breeze through on February 27th. Just a day later, on February 28th, he's likely to find himself behind bars. After that, he'll be facing a Senate trial where a conviction and removal from office seem almost certain. It's the end of his presidency, not slowly fading away, but happening swiftly. In just a matter of days, he'll be confronting felony charges, and nothing will ever be the same for him. His approval ratings have plunged to 34%, and independent voters are jumping ship like never before. Even within his own party, Republicans are starting to break ranks and call for his resignation. The MAGA movement is fracturing, and the protective political bubble surrounding Trump is bursting. Everything is piling up at once. The legal pressures are escalating. Congress is pushing forward with impeachment, and judges are giving the green light for his arrest. Federal marshals are gearing up to take him into custody. And then there's that stunning moment when it all comes to a head. Judge Cannon, a judge he appointed and who has often supported him, has issued a truly unprecedented order. She's determined that Trump needs to be arrested if he doesn't comply with her subpoena. This all kicked off when she called for the White House server logs, which could serve as crucial evidence, showing that Trump ordered the Department of Justice to delete Epstein's files. Those logs are the key to figuring out which IP addresses accessed what. A major development in this unfolding saga. So, there's this database from the Department of Justice, and it reveals something pretty critical. It shows all the time someone accessed it, what got deleted, and most importantly, it connects those accesses to Trump's own home, specifically Mar-a-Lago. This is the kind of evidence Trump really doesn't want to hand over to the judge. It's the proof pointing toward his guilt. When Judge Cannon issued a subpoena for those logs, she was essentially asking Trump to provide evidence of his own misdeeds. Instead of complying, Trump decided to ignore her demand, which is a serious move. By defying a federal judge's order, he's not just being uncooperative, he's committing obstruction of justice. You see, when a judge commands someone to produce evidence, that refusal is a crime, particularly when that someone is the President of the United States. It amplifies the seriousness of the situation, as the President is expected to uphold the law, follow court orders, and abide by the same rules as everyone else. Judge Cannon wasn't taking Trump's noncompliance lightly. She realized he was trying to hide evidence and obstructing justice by defying the court. As a result, she issued a pretty significant arrest authorization. This legal order means that if Trump continues to ignore the subpoena, she'll go ahead and authorize his arrest. U.S. Marshals would show up at Mar-a-Lago with Secret Service agents having to step aside, and Trump would find himself in federal custody. What's even more important is that Judge Cannon made something crystal clear in her order. She stated that presidential immunity yields to criminal process when evidence is irrefutable. That's a direct message telling Trump he can't hide behind claims of executive privilege or presidential immunity when he's caught breaking the law. Presidential immunity is meant to protect presidents from civil lawsuits for actions taken as part of their official duties. However, it doesn't shield them from criminal prosecution for actual crimes. Judge Cannon is clearly indicating that Trump has indeed committed serious offenses by obstructing justice. So, here's the situation. Trump has been caught trying to hide evidence and ignoring court orders. And guess what? Those moves aren't protected by any kind of presidential immunity. This totally shoots down his claim that a president can't be arrested or prosecuted while in office. He's been insisting that he has absolute immunity, that he shouldn't face any consequences for his actions. But Judge Cannon has stepped in, and she's made it clear that a president can be arrested for committing felonies and can face prosecution for crimes. Presidential immunity doesn't sweep criminal behavior under the rug. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Judge Cannon has set a deadline for February 28th, which comes just a day after the House votes on impeachment. So, the timeline is straightforward. On February 27th, the House will vote on impeaching Trump. And by February 28th, if he hasn't handed over the server logs, an arrest warrant could be issued. That's when things get really tricky. The U.S. Marshals would be ready to act, and the Secret Service would need to decide if they'll allow the arrest or try to resist it. Trump is then faced with a choice. Will he surrender or try to flee? That's the moment when a genuine constitutional crisis could erupt. The Secret Service will have to choose between protecting him or upholding the law. The military will be stuck deciding whether to support the president or defend the Constitution, and Congress will need to figure out if emergency procedures are necessary. The Senate would have to act swiftly to go to trial and convict him before he could be arrested. This is the scenario on the horizon, and Trump is very much aware of it. It almost feels like the lights have gone out on his True Social because he's been unusually quiet. There are no posts coming from him, which is quite a shift. He's not attacking judges anymore, likely because he knows an arrest could be imminent. Instead of his usual defiant rants, there's this eerie silence, which honestly hints at a state of panic. The evidence stacked against him is pretty damning. The server logs show when files were accessed from Trump's residence while they were deleted, and the timing aligns perfectly. The IP address is traced directly back to Mar-a-Lago. These deleted files include documents related to Trump, some even involving Epstein, that make serious allegations against him. It's not just circumstantial, it's all pretty substantial proof. So, here's the situation. There's this solid evidence that clearly shows Trump ordered some deletions. He knows if those logs get handed over to the judge, he's looking at a conviction and possibly prison time. Because of that, he's refusing to play by the rules, thinking maybe he can wiggle his way out of this somehow. Maybe he's counting on Congress to back him up, or hoping the military won't let him get arrested. Spoiler alert, he's mistaken. The walls are closing in, and he's starting to realize that there's no way out of this. The law is tightening its grip, and it's not just the courts. Congress is onto him, too. He's really stuck now. His approval rating has plummeted to 34%, meaning 2/3 of Americans aren't on board with his presidency anymore. His support is dwindling, and even his core followers are starting to splinter over scandals and the latest evidence against him. It's a new territory for Trump. He's never had to face consequences like this before, never actually thought about the idea of arrest or imprisonment. And now he's grappling with all of it at once. Let's unpack what's about to go down in the next few days, because we're poised to witness something truly unique in American history. We're looking at a president on the brink of impeachment while also facing arrest at the same time. There's going to be constitutional processes unfolding that we've never seen before. We're about to see a clash between the rule of law and presidential authority, and it's important to grasp what this all means for our country. First off, let's talk about the constitutional side of things. On the 27th of February, the House is getting ready to impeach a sitting president. That's pretty remarkable, although it has happened before, just rarely. But that's only the start. The very next day, on February 28th, a federal judge is expected to approve the arrest of that same president. And that, my friends, is unprecedented in American history. A sitting president has never been arrested or taken into federal custody and definitely hasn't ever been handcuffed and processed by law enforcement. Well, it looks like we're about to see that happen. So, picture this situation. A federal judge decides to issue an arrest warrant for the president. And suddenly, we find ourselves in a bit of a constitutional pickle. This is where the Secret Service has a tough choice to make. Their job is to protect the president, but they also have to follow the law. It's a tricky spot, right? When those U.S. Marshals pull up to Mar-a-Lago with an arrest warrant in hand, the Secret Service will have to step back and let the Marshals do their thing because they can't interfere with a lawful arrest. Once that happens, we'll see Trump getting arrested, processed, and booked, ultimately facing the federal court for charges like obstruction of justice and contempt of court. Now, think about how this ties into the Senate trial regarding Trump's impeachment. If he's arrested before the trial kicks off, it's going to leave a huge mark on that whole process. The Senate is where they decide if he gets convicted or acquitted, and an arrest brings everything into a new light. With felony charges hanging over him, plus evidence of ignoring federal court orders and obstructing justice, the chances of conviction skyrocket. Republican senators who might have been debating how to vote could very well swing towards conviction once they see Trump in that position. It will be crystal clear that he broke the law, and at that point, the only choice seems to be to remove him from office to uphold the rule of law. If Trump gets arrested on the 28th of February, things would escalate pretty quickly. By early March, if he's convicted by the Senate, he would find himself out of office. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, would step in as the temporary president. That would mean the Secret Service would have to switch their protection from Trump over to Johnson. Meanwhile, Trump would be moved into federal custody, and suddenly he wouldn't just be a president. He'd be a private citizen facing serious trouble. Without the shield of presidential immunity, Trump would become just another person dealing with the criminal justice system. This means he's looking at federal felony charges and potential prison time with a trial in federal court that would have truly overwhelming and irrefutable evidence against him. The reality is he could be facing decades behind bars. All of his political power would vanish, and he wouldn't have the option to pardon himself or look out for his family members who might also be in hot water. Essentially, Trump would be fully exposed and vulnerable. Now, looking at the bigger picture, this situation would shake things up significantly for the Republican Party and American politics as a whole. Once Trump is out and possibly imprisoned, the party is going to need a major overhaul, pulling away from Trump and everything he represents. They're in for some tough times ahead, especially during the midterm elections in 2026, because voters aren't going to separate the party from Trump's actions. The Democrats are likely to make a significant comeback, reclaiming the House and keeping hold of the Senate, as well as picking up governorships and state legislatures. The whole political landscape is set to shift in favor of the Democrats, primarily because the Republican Party let Trump go unchecked as he abused power and flouted the Constitution. This moment is bound to go down in American history. It's honestly hard to believe that a president once thought he was above the law, but here we are witnessing the moment when the rule of law stepped back in. Judges, Congress, and the American people have come together, making it clear that no one, not even a president, can escape accountability. This is the time when the Constitution has reigned supreme, showing presidential power that its days of unchecked authority are over. So what's on the horizon? The timeline is pretty straightforward. On the 27th of February, the House will vote on impeachment. With 225 supporters, it's a done deal. The impeachment will pass with strong backing. Then just a day later, the arrest warrant is issued. U.S. Marshals make their way to Mar-a-Lago, and before you know it, Trump is arrested, booked, and arraigned. By early March, the Senate will hold a trial. Trump will face a conviction leading to his removal from office. And in his place, Mike Johnson will step up as president. But the consequences don't stop there. Trump is looking at serious federal criminal charges. He'll find himself in federal court confronted with overwhelming evidence, facing a jury that's likely to find him guilty. The reality is that he's staring down the barrel of decades in federal prison. That's the path he's on, and it's one of his own making. He can't escape this reality. Now that he's no longer president, He can't pardon himself or invoke executive privilege. The power he once had to obstruct justice is gone, leaving him fully exposed to the criminal justice system, which is set to hold him accountable for his actions. This moment marks a definitive choice for America, favoring the rule of law over autocracy. It's a pivotal moment when the Constitution has triumphed and the message from judges, Congress, and the citizens is loud and clear. No more presidential abuse of power. What's about to unfold in the coming days will reshape American history, dividing it into before and after this moment. Before, when Trump was in power, and after his conviction, arrest, and imprisonment for his crimes.